Welcome back to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Pod. It is Monday, January 22nd. Nick Whalen, Alex Barutha back with you. We've had a weird couple weeks, Alex. We had no show last Monday with the MLK Day. We had a bunch of games going on, a lot of kind of background work to do. I think New Year's Day ended up being a Monday as well. So I feel like we haven't been doing this one as consistently as we'd like. But up until the All-Star break, we'll be on our normal schedule, although we're not too far away from that at this point. Before we dive in on waiver wire, some notes from the weekend, looking ahead to the week ahead, we'll talk about the schedule, some teams, some situations that you need to be aware of. How was your weekend? Are you still processing the Green Bay Packers loss on Saturday? I know you're not maybe as big of a football guy as I am, but where are you at emotionally?
Look, I think the fact that, they got through past the first round, with a team that didn't look so good at the beginning of the season, like Jordan Love, The thing is the transformation Jordan Love went through during the season. I feel like this is a pretty good, like if you had said, after week 3 or after week 4, and maybe even further, that this was the outcome, that you played the 49ers close. At this point, I think people would have been actually pretty happy about that.
You're not wrong whatsoever. That's an extremely rational way to look at it. That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying all week. And for the record, if you're watching along live, we're both here in Wisconsin. That's why we're beginning with like 2 minutes of Packers talk. But that's what I was saying all week was like, oh, you're playing with house money. 3 weeks ago, we didn't even think this team would be into the playoffs. They were 2-5 at one point. And then all of a sudden, if you're saying all we need is a close game and I'll be happy, then you get the close game and you're like, well, if we're up by 7 going into the fourth, we might as well win this thing. And yeah, it's the group chats, Alex, have not been friendly over these last couple of days. A lot of stats, a lot of commiserating being thrown around. Green Bay now 4-9 in divisional and NFC title games since the Super Bowl year. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Just wanted to make sure you're doing all right in the wake of yet another devastating Packers loss. Let's take care of some business quick, and then we'll talk waiver wire. As always, get your questions in the chat, guys. We will hit those over the second half of the pod. We'll, if any of them are kind of pertaining to what we're talking about at the moment, we'll throw those up on the screen. But get those questions in there. We will answer as many of them as we can later in the episode. We are brought to you by Underdog, and Underdog is the #1 platform for NBA best ball and DFS player pick'em contests. If you haven't tried Underdog yet and you're a new user, you can get a first-time deposit bonus up to $100 and a free 6-month subscription to our site, rotowire.com. Just use the promo code RWNBA. That's RW, as in RW McQuarters, RWNBA. Go to underdogfantasy.com, download the Underdog app today, and use that code RWNBA. That'll get you a free RotoWire subscription and that deposit bonus up to $100. Alex, you and I have been playing on Underdog a ton. I think I've done like at least 2 Underdog. I guess I call them lineups. I don't know. I don't think parlay is the right term, but you know what we're saying. I think I've done 2 of those like every single night of the NBA season so far. And, we talked best ball. We did a bunch of those, earlier in the summer, but baseball is coming up as well. I know they have best balls available over on Underdog. So if you're a baseball guy, go check those out. We're also brought to you by FanDuel. You can tackle millions in prizes all playoffs long in FanDuel Fantasy Contest. If you're new to fantasy, there's no better time to get in on the action because right now, new customers get a 100% deposit match up to $100. Playing fantasy for huge, massive cash prizes on FanDuel is fun and exciting. Just draft your lineup, watch your team move up the leaderboard. Plus, on FanDuel, you can choose from full slate contests featuring a bunch of games, single game contests, season-long best ball, beginner only. Those are great if you're just getting into it. Basically, you can do whatever you want. I play in a private contest on FanDuel every weekend. Just a couple friends here in Milwaukee. You can set up your own little contest, invite whoever you want, throw as much in the prize pool as you want. Makes for a nice little side game to have while you're watching football. And the best part is when you win, you get paid instantly. So playoffs going on right now, NBA season, we're right in the thick of it. Go over to FanDuel. You'll get a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. Just go to FanDuel.com to start playing for huge cash prizes today. All right, already getting some good questions in the chat. Again, guys, keep throwing those in there. We will hit those in a little bit. Let's talk waiver wire, Alex. A lot of waivers in the leagues that I play in at least run late Sunday night. I usually find myself doing waivers like 20 minutes before the waiver wire deadline, which was once again the case last night. Didn't really do a whole lot in my NFBKC. I threw a couple bids in, but just kind of playing with the roster that I have right now. Got LaMelo Ball back, so it should be okay there. Did you do anything in your NFBKC?
I did not. My team is just not doing that well. I don't think it's like really savable. But I mean, the people, people are pretty aggressive in the league. I think it's that time of the year where people are just like, I got to get my guy because how much fab do I have left, etc. Brandon Miller went for 216 of the 1,000 budget in NFBKC. Brogdon went for 115. We had Asar Thompson, Marvin Bagley, Luke Kennard all go off the board as well.
Yeah, I'm not currently doing well in my league. That's because LaMelo missed so much time. But one of the cool things with the NFBKC is you can kind of filter by week and see how your team did that specific week. So I've been a top 3 team now for 3 straight weeks, essentially, with LaMelo Ball back in the mix. So I'm optimistic that we could get this thing going as long as he can stay healthy. But the injuries are just been killing me. Mitchell Robinson, I had CJ McCollum, he missed time early on. Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart, I think I might just have to drop at some point here. Like I said, I didn't do a whole lot in terms of fab this week, but some interesting names were either picked up or dropped. And I do wish I would have been a little bit more aggressive across the board on Mason Plumlee, mostly because I have a couple leagues where I really need rebounds. I was riding the Andre Drummond train for a while. Chicago's schedule pretty unfriendly up until the All-Star break. I'm still okay throwing Drummond out there on a 4-game week in a 16-team league like the RotoWire Stake League, because the other options, like I was scanning through people's rosters last night just to be like, all right, where do I, where are my deficiencies? And even the best teams in the league are starting, almost everybody's starting at least 2 guys where you're like, man, that guy should not be in a starting lineup. But that's life when you're in a 16-team league. So I don't really mind Drummond on a 4-game week. 2-game week, you can't do it. 3-game week, maybe. Depending on who your other options are. But I think Mason Plumlee is a solid pickup if you need rebounds. I know he kind of split time with Tyus in their last game, but I still think Plumlee is the guy there. Both Mark Williams and Desmond Bane were dropped in my NFBKC this week.
I understand Bane. I guess I understand both. I mean, I joked on the podcast a while ago when Mark Williams went from doubtful to out for all those games. I was like, yeah, he's probably done for the year then, since they decided to actually list him as out. And I mean, Steve Clifford said he's not that close to being back. So what does that actually mean? And then Bane, Bane's expected to come back maybe late February, early March. And like a lot of fantasy leagues end in March at this point, like early March, depending on how, your league manager wants to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm going through that same calculation with Marcus Smart, and obviously there's lower upside with Smart, so I don't think you'd really think quite as much about, or think twice, I should say, about dropping him. I mean, Bane, obviously, it could be a top 30 guy, so it's a really tough decision to make. But I think it comes down to if he comes back before your league is over, which I do think timing wise he should, right? They originally gave us, I think, 6 weeks on Desmond Bane. That would mean he could be back like a week after the All-Star break. And then you're getting a month out of him. It's just, the question is, are the Grizzlies, are they a 16-win team at that point? And they just say, shut it down, or you get 2 or 3 games, and then that's kind of it. It's super, super hard to predict. And in the NFBKC, you don't have IR, right? So that's the other thing. It's like, if you have an IR slot, I think I'm not dumping Desmond Bane quite yet. I think, unless you're buried and you just really can't stomach it, if you have an IR spot and there's nobody else who makes sense to hold in there, I think the promise of getting him for a month or even a month and a half later in the year is enough that I would hold him. But if you don't have IR, it makes sense.
Yeah, in Stake League, I just had DeAndre Ayton come back, and now I got to figure out who to drop. Smart's on my bench.
This is the team that's too balanced.
Yes, I have Marcus Smart, Spencer Dinwiddie, Al Horford, and Dennis Smith Jr. And my concern is that if I drop Dinwiddie or Dennis Smith Jr., that particular one is going to start playing better again. Like if I keep Dinwiddie, he's going to start playing like crap again, and if I drop Smith Jr., he's going to start playing 35 minutes. So maybe the move is just to drop Marcus Smart. I don't know, but I got to figure out what to do there.
Looking through some of the moves in the Stake League, which we kind of use as our standard league. Again, it's 16 teams, very competitive. Everybody knows what they're doing. So I think it's kind of reminiscent of what a competitive league I think should look like. Maybe, most people are playing in 12 or 14 teamers. So you gotta live with us mentioning guys like, man, I'm scared to drop Al Horford. I'm scared to drop Dennis Smith, because that's how this league works. But I mentioned Plumlee. He was one of the higher dollar ads, only $4 out of $100 budget. Shannon grabbed him. He dropped Trayce Jackson-Davis in order to add Plumlee. I put in a bid for Santi Aldama, thinking, all right, look good the other night. You never know with Jaren Jackson. Xavier Tillman, has been banged up. He went for $7. I did not go up to $7 for Aldama.
Yeah, Aldama is one of those guys who I think we all want to be better than he actually is. Like I'm just resigned to this point where it's like, yeah, Aldama's going to have like 3 good games and then he's going to play like crap for 4 games. And then it's going to be like, you add him, you drop him, you add him, you drop him. And a 16-team league, it's fine. And you can weather the storm a little bit. And maybe it pays off like way later in the year, like maybe in March, it does. He's actually playing 35 minutes a game and is doing that. But it's almost as frustrating to roster him as it is to not roster him.
Yeah.
In a way.
So our guy, DJ Trainer, he ended up adding GG Jackson for $7. I'm going to see DJ. I'm going to go hang out with him later this week. So I'll maybe get like a boots on the ground interview here. I'm guessing he put this claim in earlier in the week. I would you still be comfortable spending, 7% of your budget, or at this point, probably significantly less than that, on GG Jackson based on what we've seen the last 2 games? Obviously if you threw that bid in like this past, a week ago, last Monday, that looks great. But he's played only 28 combined minutes over the last 2, 11 total points, 4 total rebounds, nothing on defense. Did hit a couple of threes the other night against Chicago, but this is kind of what we're dealing with these ultra small sample sizes. And again, in a 16-team league, you have to kind of take that risk. But I don't really know where to go forward with him at this point.
I had a huge monologue about him on the Friday podcast after that 10-minute performance. And I was like, look, he was terrible in college. That's why he fell so far after he reclassified. Horrible field goal percentage, 3 times as many turnovers as assists. How many times does a player like that get into the NBA on a 2-way deal and then they're good? Basically never. And then, so yeah, he had 2 out-of-body experiences. And I was like, look, if he plays 24 to 26 minutes in his next game, sure, add him. If he plays like 10 to 18, 19 minutes, just leave it alone. So my advice to anybody after that second game against Chicago where he had 8 was just don't bother. He's just not that good.
Yeah, and we'll see what he develops into. I think there's going to be more opportunity as the year goes along, but that was a game Memphis lost by 29 points, right? It's like that's the ideal GG Jackson situation. It's like game's out of hand, there's nothing on the line, throw him out there, and still only had 10 points in 19 minutes. So the Grizzlies are just kind of a mess right now. I know David Roddy was added in a bunch of leagues. I think James grabbed him over the weekend. I would rather have Roddy than GG Jackson, no question. Intrigued by Vince Williams. Like I watched that whole Grizzlies T-Wolves game. I think that was Thursday last week. He's a really interesting player. Like just kind of does it all. Gives you some defensive stats. He can pass a little bit. Took 6 threes on Saturday against Chicago. So I think there is a reasonable amount of upside there, but it really, like, Memphis to me is not a team where there's an obvious, like, all right, this guy's just going to step in and be like Cam Thomas and give you 25 a night, right? Like, I just think you have this, all of their younger guys are kind of role player types. I don't know that there's somebody who, goes from playing 8 minutes a night to 22 minutes a night and, all of a sudden looks like Anthony Simons. They don't really have a guy like that.
No, I think that's why people added Vince Williams. It seemed like he might get the most usage, or at least he had a diverse enough skill set where it's like, he might get you 4 assists. He might get you 2 steals, some threes. He's actually the 45th ranked player in fantasy over the past 2 weeks. But yeah, I mean, Tillman's back in the fold. Kennard, I guess, is playing point guard, which is whatever. We all know what Luke Kennard is at this point. But yeah, I think that's why they brought up GG Jackson, because they're like, well, we know this guy can at least get shots up, right, which is just a pure problem for Memphis at some point.
Yeah, I mean, Conchar started the last 2 games for them. He's played 27 minutes in both. Not really doing anything. Not a high usage player. I mean, he's taken 6 shots and no free throws in 54 minutes. So I know there've been times in the past where he's been like a reasonable streamer. I think it was like early last season. He had like a nice 2-week run, but the overall sample strongly suggests that he's probably not worth an add in anything but like the absolute deepest leagues. So yeah, I think Vince Williams and David Roddy to me are the 2 guys, and then you can kind of play the rotation at center. Tillman's had his weeks. Like I don't mind holding him in a deeper league, and obviously Aldama, like we just talked about. But yeah, I think Vince Williams, a week and a half now that we've had without Bane, without Smart, without Ja, I think to me, he's far and away the clear winner.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's just it's gotten so gross so quickly in Memphis.
It certainly has. Pacers went down to the Suns last night, almost covered, by the way, without Tyrese Haliburton. Thankfully, we ran out of time when I was on VSiN yesterday. I was ready to go in on why the Pacers were covering this game. But I also thought Haliburton was going to play, which he did not. So they ended up losing by 7. I think a respectable result, all things considered. Phoenix didn't shoot it well from 3, did shoot, well over 55% from the field. However, I just kind of want to do a check-in on Siakam. I think we're hopefully nearing the point where Haliburton is no longer game to game and he's just kind of back in the mix going forward. It's been, a little bit concerning that he, came back, missed a game. You would think, starting this week, he should be good to go. They're off today. Then they play Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. So 4-game week for Indiana. I know you watched some of that Suns game yesterday. Siakam, 30 minutes, only 15 points on 14 shots, no steals, no blocks. Did have 7 assists and 4 boards. But what have you seen from him so far in Indy?
I mean, he needs Haliburton to be there. It's a really bad setup for him to be kind of just thrown out there with no Haliburton. It's he doesn't know the offense that much. The other guys on the team, he's going to be bumping into guys and stuff. So it's like I don't take honestly a lot from the last game, other than it was funny to see him throw his hands up in confusion on defense when his team like guys would get blown by and there was no help rotation, and he was like. In Toronto, this would get anybody yanked. Like, right. No, you just would not be on the court if you played defense like this. So that was kind of funny. But I mean, it's in the game where Haliburton played, he played really well. Siakam did 21, 6 and 3, very efficient. I think that'll continue for him.
Siakam did foul out of that game, but don't be misled by the box score. He committed a foul at the end with like 10 seconds left, so it didn't really impact anything, although it was a little bit of foul trouble, and I think that's why he played closer to 30 minutes. Kind of weird TJ McConnell usage. This started, even when Haliburton was still on the shelf last week. He went from 22, 25 minutes, had that 33-minute game against Sacramento, and a couple where he was under 20. Started yesterday against Phoenix, only played 12 minutes in that one. A lot of bench usage for the Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, McConnell has his games. It was just weird at the beginning of the year where he wasn't being used at all. And it seemed like they were going away from him entirely, just running with like Nembhard as the backup. And then Carlisle was like, no, we're gonna do some more McConnell here and there. And then they needed him when Haliburton got hurt. And it's really hard to trust him. I don't really understand what is going on. Like, I wish I had more clarity, but I think there are just some McConnell games where he's on and it works. And there's other games where it's like he's getting played off the floor because of his defense and things like that. It just doesn't work. And I think Carlisle has a quick leash with him.
Ben Mathurin as well, who played 14 minutes yesterday. Right when Haliburton first went down, I feel like we were spot on. We're like, I think Mathurin, this should be his opportunity to take off. Like, he's going to force Carlisle's hand, even if he doesn't like him, even if he doesn't like what he does on defense. Like, they're going to need his scoring. And, he had a pretty nice run up until this past weekend where, he was in double figures in 13 straight games. He was averaging about 18 points on 52% shooting. The 3-point shooting had come around as well. He was starting to get to the line a little bit more. That was something that had dropped off pretty significantly early this season. Like, you forget as a rookie, I mean, he was getting to the line almost 6 times a game, which is crazy. And he's at like half of that right now, but played 23 minutes in that ugly loss to Portland on Friday, and then just 14 minutes off the bench yesterday against Phoenix. So, I mean, not really knowing right now what's up with Haliburton. We won't get an update until tomorrow. Like, would you be comfortable starting Ben Mathurin on a 4-game week? Does it have to be 16+ team league?
Yeah, I don't even think you need to roster him in a 12-team league. And in a 16-team league, I honestly would not feel bad about keeping him on my bench. I think I'd want to start him in a 16-teamer on a 4-game week, but I also may have other options. Again, it kind of depends on your team. But yeah, it's like, the first game, like, look, Siakam joining the team is not what made Ben Mathurin score 2 points because he took 8 shots. He just missed his shots. So, expect that should have been like a 12-point game in theory if he stayed with his efficiency. Right. And then this game against Phoenix was bad. So It's tough, man, because they don't, trading for Siakam, the Pacers' main issue still now is they don't play defense. So there's just going to be a lot of games where it's like, we don't really need Mathurin scoring. We need Nesmith's defense. And we might need Nembhard out there for whatever reason because Haliburton's out of the game. And again, there's a ton of guys in this team are just like, Carlisle is so hot and cold with the guys on this team. He plays who's playing well, whatever they need. He's not locked guys into minutes or anything. So it is hard to predict on a game-by-game basis.
Yeah, Doc Rivers was on a pod, I think it was last week, talking about Lou Williams. And he basically was like, yeah, when I had Lou Williams on my team, I would tell him, like, you're going in the game and your one job is to score. And if you don't have it that night, I'm pulling you. And that's just what it is. Like, you basically have like a 5-minute audition, and you better look good. If you do, we'll play you more. You'll lead the second unit the whole night, and that'll be that. You could get a 25-point game. If you don't have it that night, we're getting you out of there. And I feel like that's kind of where Mathurin's at with Carlisle.
Yeah, I think so. And some of it, again, I think he's really talented. He'll probably, in my opinion, he'll probably cap out. Like, his best role probably is like a 6-man of that ilk of the Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford type. And the Pacers are a competitive team, right? So it's not like this team is bad and he should be getting 35 minutes. It's like, well, he's just they got to play. If he's contributing to winning, he's going to play. If he's not, he's not.
A couple news items we'll hit, and then we'll get to some questions in the chat. Trae Young, we found out last night, entering concussion protocol. They last played Saturday against Cleveland, so got a little bit banged up in that game. He will not play to begin this week. And as we know with concussion protocol, could be one game, could be 2 games, could be more. It is a 4-game week for Atlanta. So they're at Sacramento tonight, at Golden State on Wednesday, home for Dallas Friday, and then home for the Raptors on Sunday. I absolutely hate these situations. And unfortunately, I don't have Trae Young in, I don't know if I have him in a single league this year. I wish I had more of him. Over the last couple of weeks, he's been on a bit of a downturn. The field goal percentage has really suffered. The assists have been down as well. He's shooting like 35% over his last 6 games, but obviously on balance, he's one of the safest players in fantasy. How do you typically handle a situation like this where you have a guy who's an every week starter, even on like a 2-game week in a deep league, you're probably starting Trae Young, but not knowing, his concussion status going into a Monday game. Do you still throw him out there? Do you go with like a significantly lesser 4-game option? How do you lean in these?
Yeah, the concussions are tough because sometimes they last like 3 days, 4 days, and other times it's like 2 weeks. I would say Young is so good that if you just hope that he's going to play 2 games, you still start him. Like, if you think there's a fairly realistic possibility he plays 2 games, you start him. And I think there is. So I think this is a situation he's so good where you throw him in your lineup and it's just kind of a Hail Mary play.
Well, it's kind of nice the way things are spaced out, right? Like, if they had a Monday, Tuesday back-to-back, I think I would maybe hold him out because to me, you're guaranteed to miss 2 games. Whereas it wouldn't be that crazy if he was back Wednesday at Golden State. You would think, 5 days should be enough in general to clear protocol and get back for Friday and Sunday. So yeah, I think when it's a player of Trae Young's ilk, you probably lean toward putting him out there. If you're in a 12-team league, it's maybe a little bit different or certainly anything shallower. All right. Any other major news items for the weekend? Any players, teams you want to hit before we start answering these questions?
No, I think we can just dive in.
All right, let's do it. Well, we will go through chronologically here. First of all, the Dr. D 314 says, thanks for everything you guys do. Not a question. We appreciate it. Nonetheless, thank you, Dr. D, for tuning in. Jordy says, Caruso or Bilal Coulibaly for the rest of the season. He's playing in an 8-cat league.
That's interesting. My concern with Caruso always is that he just gets hurt all the time. Like, I think Caruso is the better player, has more upside even in fantasy, but is constantly hurt. There's the trade rumors. Is he going to get moved? Hard to know. I think if he does get moved, he probably still plays 20 to 25 minutes. I think I would rather have Caruso because the Coulibaly thing is still very unproven, and we know he has a ton of defensive upside, but it's not like freakish right now. It's 1.1 blocks and 1.1 steals per 36, which is really not anything crazy. So I think I would rather have Caruso.
Yeah, and the Wizards, 2 weeks into the year, it was like, all right, the season's over. So I don't know that there's some sort of like, I don't think there's some sort of like late season, like, all right, we got to get Coulibaly more involved. It's like, that's already kind of happening. Like he's playing 25 to 30 minutes most nights already. Like I don't see that number dramatically increasing. Over the last month, he's averaging 6.5 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.6 combined steals and blocks. Like there was some 3-point volume early in the season. That was encouraging. That's kind of dried up. Like he's giving you like half a 3 per game. Field goal percentage is terrible. Caruso, for what it's worth, in the last month ranks like 140 spots ahead of him. So even with some of the risk there, we don't know what Chicago is going to look like. Caruso could be somewhere else a few weeks from now, but I think he's pretty transferable. I would, unless this is like a positional eligibility thing and you'd rather have somebody who's forward eligible, this is pretty easily Caruso for me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right. Manila Most Wanted asks, is it time to drop Cam Johnson? Not a question that we necessarily thought we would be answering this season, but yeah, it's been a rough couple of weeks for Cam Johnson. Last 7 games, he's under 10 points per game. The 3-point shooting has been disastrous, hovering around 25%. For the most part, the volume has been there. The minutes have been about where he's been sitting for much of the year. So I'm, again, depending on your league size, I would be more inclined to ride this out because I don't know how much better you're going to do. But if you're in a 10 or 12 team league, then yeah, it's at least a consideration.
Yeah, I don't hate the idea of dropping him in a 10 team league. Last year I think was a look at sort of his ceiling. Like last year he ranked 89th per game. I think the hope this year is he'd be somewhere closer to like 60 or 75. And you're right, he is just shooting poorly. Like assuming he can get his shot back, it should be fine and he should go back to averaging 15 a game. But he's not like he's not been projected to be, or even when he was shooting that well, he wasn't a great fantasy player. In a 12-team league, I would still hang on. You never know, honestly, what's going to happen with the Nets at the deadline. I'm not saying they're going to trade Mikal Bridges, but they're just so.
Are you saying they're going to trade Mikal Bridges?
I am. Yeah, they're gonna deal him. You heard it here first. But yeah, he's fine. I would hang on to him in 12s, 10s. It's not necessary, but he's still averaging on the year. He's still averaging 25 fantasy points a game.
Yeah. Prior to this 2-week downturn, over his previous 20 games, so we're talking like Thanksgiving through the beginning of January, 15 points, 2.8 threes per game, 50% from the field, 45% from 3. So I think the larger sample would imply that he's going to come around. And he's young enough that, you don't worry about, if the Nets were to go in a different direction, he's like, losing minutes at the end of the year. Like I still think he's kind of a foundational piece. Schedule wise, they have 3 games this week. I think we have 12 teams that have 4 games. So 3's, closer to average. 3 games next week, and then 4 before the All-Star break. So no, nothing major there. It's not a great schedule, but it's not a disaster. Matt Carmody says, man, Pack should have won that one. Packers fan as well from Wisconsin. Matt, our condolences. I am actually a Jaguars fan first and foremost, but every year this happens, the Jags get eliminated, and then I'm like, all right, I guess I'll root for the Packers. And I was hooting and hollering a little bit on Saturday night, but yeah, man, I was texting some friends this morning, Alex, and I'm sure you've been through this, like with the Bucs or any other teams you care about. Like one of my favorite things every Monday during football season is I just I binge through a bunch of recap pods around the NFL, Bill Simmons, Russillo, and it's like when your team wins, that's all you want, right? You just want to read more and more and more about how great your team is. When your team loses, that is just torture.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. It's just again, if you reset the expectations to what they were in the middle of the year, you can't be that mad about it. And I think it's like, it sucks now where you're like, oh, we could have gone farther. We had that game, everything like that. But if you just look ahead till next year, like things should be, we have completely new expectations.
It's 13 straight years that it's been, all right, we'll get them next year. Next year will be the year. Look, last thing I'll say on this, worst part is like they would beat the Lions. I'm not in on this Lions team. I know it's a fun story, whatever. I feel bad for Detroit. Shout out to Shannon, but that's the thing. It's like this would have been the toughest test. It's like you beat the 2 best teams that you're going to face in Dallas and then potentially San Francisco, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, this goes from fun run to like, whoa, we could be in the Super Bowl. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Listen to our show on Sirius XM tonight. You'll hear a lot more Packers talk from me there. All right, Paul says, I traded away Porzingis and Jamal Murray for Kevin Durant and Valanciunas. Is this a win in a 9-cat league? Porzingis, by the way, will not play tonight. Sounds like it's somewhat load management for Boston.
Yeah, Valanciunas is a little inconsistent now with Larry Nance back, but he's still putting up numbers. Still like a huge threat for a double-double, great per minute. I think this trade is all right. These are always hard trades to evaluate in terms of like you traded two, top 50 guys for like a top 10 guy and then like a 90th ranked guy. I think you're fine. Like I it's hard for me to like necessarily grade this a win, but I think this is a fine trade.
It's not a loss. I'll say that. I think you have more upside because you have KD, but you've also exposed yourself to a little more risk. Valanciunas does not have top 40 upside in the same way that both Porzingis and Murray do, but Porzingis and Murray don't have top 5 upside like Kevin Durant does. So I think if KD stays healthy, this probably goes down as a win for you. Obviously, if KD gets hurt, that's part of the risk calculation here. Then you're going to be in trouble. But I think it's a fine deal. Paul also asked, who's a better long-term hold, Sochan or Caruso?
I mean, if San Antonio starts shutting guys down, in which I don't even know who necessarily they would shut down. This whole team is young and they're already so terrible. But Sochan's been playing better lately, like 60th ranked player over the past 2 weeks. Better long-term hold. It might be Sochan now that the Spurs have committed to playing a real lineup. And he doesn't have the sort of injury risk of Caruso, but do you have a strong opinion on this?
Yeah, I think you said it. Yeah, it might be Sochan. It also might not be Sochan. So we need to keep that in mind. No, I think if you're looking for upside, it's Sochan. He's been the better player of late. He was playing 30+ minutes. The assists, like some of the high upside assist games have been there. He's got a couple 7-8 assist games over the last few weeks. Rebounding's been a little more consistent. And like you said, I don't know who would be shut down for this team. Ironically, I think it might be Wembanyama, if anything, right? It's like, I think that's the asset they would want to preserve. It would be kind of a reversal of what you normally see when it's like, the veterans are the ones sitting down at the end of the year. Whereas like, I think if the Spurs just like get to the 62 game mark and they're like, all right, we've seen what we need to see. Wembanyama's the real deal. What else are we doing here by playing him for the final 15 games of the year, other than exposing him to injury risk? Maybe that opens up a little more for Sochan, although like assist wise, I think having Wembanyama out there is a good thing for him. So maybe that's a net neutral, but if we're talking beyond this year, then it's still probably Sochan for me. I've never been super high on him. I think, we're starting to see some improvement that didn't look like it was there early in the year. But if you're saying like who could be the better player 3 years from now, then I think you have to at least be able to imagine what Sochan could become.
Yeah, I really like Sochan as a player. He just shouldn't be a point guard. Mm-hmm. It turns out he plays well when he's playing his natural position.
All right, Dr. D is back in the mix. 14-team points league. This is a trade question. Jrue and Brandon Miller for Wiggins and D'Lo. He said it's very trade deadline dependent. Obviously, D'Lo could be on the move. Even Wiggins, I suppose, could be on the move. But let's just say current situation. Would you rather have Holiday and Miller or Wiggins and Russell?
Wiggins is horrible.
He is bad. He's very bad.
Brandon Miller, pretty up and down, but really strong past 2 games. So I think you need to take that into account at least. I think I would rather have Jrue and Miller. We should mention D'Lo's been balling out, but it's like, how long does that last? What are they up to? It's just, I really don't understand what's happening there. I wish I did. I think I would want the Jrue Miller side. It feels a little more reliable to me.
All right, good question from Victor G. He says, is Jayson Tatum a buy low right now? Where do you project him finishing in 9-cat rankings? So let's go over to 9-cat. Last 30 days, Jayson Tatum ranks 18th. If you're looking at just the last 2 weeks, he comes in at 81st. So yeah, it's been a bit of a rough go for Jayson Tatum. A lot of that is percentage dependent. Even in what's considered like a bad 2 weeks for him, he's still averaging 23, 7, and 4. 2.5 threes a game, but he's shooting 40% over the last 2 weeks. So that's really what's killing his value. Free throw shooting's been down a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Jayson Tatum guy, especially in fantasy. He's like Trae Young to me, where those guys don't really miss time. They don't necessarily have top 3, top 5 upside, but if you look at total value, they always rank like 5 to 10 spots higher because they don't miss time and they're super consistent. So yeah, if there's somebody who's, panicking about Jayson Tatum, who has there's no reason to believe that his performance is just going to fall off the rest of the way, I would be buying him right now if I could.
Yeah, guys like this, I don't know. I think you have to look at the NBA, like a 2-week chunk in the NBA is kind of like one game in the NFL. So it's almost like if you don't play NFL fantasy, I don't even really play NFL fantasy, but it's you got to think of it like you'd be asking if one of the best, a top 25 player in the NFL had one bad game, and you're like, do I buy low? So it's like for a superstar like Tatum, yes, buy low, because it's just he's at a bad 6-7 games or whatever it is. He's again, I think I would trade any I projected to be a top 25 player the rest of the year, 9-cat. So if you can get rid of like a 30th ranked or a 35th ranked player for him or something like that, I would absolutely do it.
Yeah, I think he can rank higher. I would have him as a top 20 guy. I mean, he could be a top 15 guy the rest of the year. You look at where he's finished in total value the last few years: 4th, 5th, 8th, 15th. And that takes us all the way back to his third year in the NBA in 2019. So, I mean, he's been about as safe of a bet as it gets. And, he always ranks a little bit lower in per game value, but at worst, he's been like a mid-second round value for 4 straight years. So, in summary, buy Jayson Tatum. Skeeter says, should I be looking to trade away Wembanyama? Do you guys think he gets shut down? Yeah, we talked about that a little bit ago. I mean, I think it's happening at some point. I would be pretty surprised if Wembanyama is out there for game 82 for the 13-win San Antonio Spurs. It's just, like you said, when does it happen? And the Spurs aren't going to tip their hand here. They're not going to make an announcement. On maybe it's like right before the All-Star game, they'll tell us when he's shut down. It's a tough game to play, man, because it's even though he's this minutes limit's been really frustrating. It's been going on now for 12 games. His numbers are fantastic. I mean, 22, 8, 3.5, 3.7 blocks. He's still taking a decent amount of threes. Like it's hard to say that you want to get off of a guy right now. I would probably wait a few more weeks. Maybe there's someone in your league who doesn't think he's going to get shut down or isn't paying attention. But what do you think?
It's tough because the minutes they're back up now. He had played he hadn't reached his past 3 games. He's played at least 27 minutes. He hadn't reached 27 minutes before that since December 17th. But we all know he's not the back-to-backs thing. It's still limited minutes. He's still ranked 11th on the year. So it's like, what you trade him for is really confusing. Like if you trade him, I still think you want a top 25 player back.
Yeah.
And
he's got the name value.
Yeah. It's like, is anybody trading you a top 25 player for Wembanyama if they also think that Wembanyama is going to get shut down? Maybe they don't think that. I mean, again, if you want to float him out there and someone doesn't think he's going to get shut down or whatever, and someone offers you Jayson Tatum, I would probably do that. But nobody knows. I wish we had more insights, but we don't have any more insights than anybody else does.
All right, Matt says, who do you think is the best stream out of Jalen Suggs, Jaden McDaniels, or Luke Kennard, Yahoo Points League? I will say if we're talking for the week, Jalen Suggs has 3 games. The other 2 guys have 4. So maybe that kind of breaks the tie, and then you're deciding between McDaniels and Kennard. Depends what you need, of course, as well. I mean, if you need threes, then I think you look to Kennard, who's giving you 3.1 threes per game since he's moved into the starting lineup. Again, 4-game week for Memphis. McDaniels has played well too. Obviously going to give you a different stat profile, but you got 3 pretty decent options there. I guess on balance, I would probably lean Kennard. I do like Jalen Suggs tonight. I think they got a pretty decent matchup, much more favorable than playing Miami the other night. And he's been, Jalen Suggs has been so much better at home this season than on the road. But yeah, I think it's close enough where I'm not leaning Suggs when he only has 3 games.
Yeah, when it's close like this, you just lean on the guys who have an extra game. That's Kennard and McDaniels. And I would lean Kennard because he has more of a usage upside and is playing 30 minutes pretty consistently. High usage, high minutes, that correlates really well in points leagues. Yeah. So I would lean on Kennard.
All right, we'll try to go quickly through some of these. Scoot or Nesmith, 9-cat rest of season. Could not be more different players.
Yeah, seriously. Look, I just don't think. What are the chances Scoot turns things around to a significant portion and becomes really a viable 9-cat player? Like he's had some, like at the beginning of the year, he couldn't even put together like 3 good games in a row. Now he's had some stretches where he can put like 3 decent ones in a row, but then it just falls off again.
Yeah.
Even if he gets more usage, I don't know. His field goal percentage is bad. His turnovers are really high. I think I would rather have Nesmith, honestly. In a points league, I could understand the Scoot thing, but the Scoot's killing you in category leagues. He just is.
Yeah, I mean, he ranks a good like 200 plus spots behind Nesmith in the last month. And that's not gospel. It's situational in some ways, but yeah, in 9-cat especially, the turnovers really, really hurt you. So I would go Nesmith until Scoot proves that that he could be a little more consistent. And again, this is a situation in Portland where it's like they've been in the tank all year. I don't know that there's a hand it over to Scoot moment coming, maybe very late in the season if they were to rest guys like Grant and Simons, but they've kind of been in that mode already. So I would go Nesmith. All right, who to start tonight? Barrett, Suggs, or Ivey? So for context, Barrett and the Raptors are home for Memphis. Suggs home for the Cavaliers. Jaden Ivey home for the Bucks.
Cade's not back, is he?
Listed as doubtful, so probably not.
I would go Ivey. I mean, it's a really tough matchup against Milwaukee in a sense, although Milwaukee's defense is their weak point, especially their backcourt defense. So I think it would for me, it would either be Ivey or Barrett. Yeah, Barrett's on a heater, like a lifetime heater right now, shooting the ball, but I don't have a strong preference between Barrett or Ivey. I mean, Barrett has the better matchup. So if you want to lean on matchup, I would say Barrett, but both have upside.
Yeah, that's a really close call to me. I would go Barrett. I think he's just a little bit safer. I think his floor game is higher than Ivey's floor game, and I think they have comparable upside right now. I don't know if it's really a bad matchup against Milwaukee. I mean, they put up 135 on him a couple days ago. The Pistons did hit 21 threes in that game, which is part of the reason I actually like Milwaukee to win and cover. I think they're 12-point favorites tonight. That's just not going to be repeatable. It's the most threes they've hit in any game by I think by 2 or 3 all season. So that's more than anything what kept them in. But I would go Barrett. I'll break the tie. I'll say Barrett. All right. Zach says, hi, great show. Thank you, Zach. Thinking of trading for Haliburton. My offer is Booker plus someone. Need thoughts on who I should pair with him range-wise, thinking Caruso. Yeah, I think that's a decent place to start. Booker by himself is a pretty appealing player. You're not getting Haliburton straight up for Booker, but you're going to need some sort of sweetener, and Booker's good enough that I don't think that sweetener has to be like another top 50 guy, obviously.
Yeah, I would not. Ideally, you could trade like your worst consistent starter, I think is the way I would put this. Yeah. Like I would move Booker and your worst guy that you start, 75% of the time, start there, and then see what the guy says. Because in theory, you should be able to you're gonna get the Haliburton upside in return, and you should be able to stream that last starting spot anyway, especially late in the year when there's more resting, more injuries. There should be more streaming options, and you could be really. We haven't even talked about this at all. We're coming up on one of the most crucial waiver wire periods of the entire year, the post-deadline waiver wire period. So if you are really aggressive, if you're in a fab league after the waiver or after the trade deadline in real life, you can make up for some of that lost, lost depth that you may give up in a trade.
All right, Derek White or Tyus Jones rest of season if you're punting turnovers. Both guys pretty low turnover players, so I'm not sure that really affects the calculus that much. My default is Derek White here, pretty obviously. I mean, he's been a fantastic player, kind of borderline all-star talk. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's been a much better player on balance than Tyus Jones. So to me, I'll just say Derek White unless you're in dire need of assists.
It's definitely White. Has been better all year. Role is way more stable. Definitely Derek White.
Michael says, hey guys, are we dropping Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, or Brandon Miller to make space for Franz Wagner coming back from the IR slot, 10-team 9-cat league?
So this is tough because Brandon Miller has had 2 great back-to-back games. And Naz Reid is pretty reliant on like Gobert or Towns getting hurt, but he can have big games regardless. Depends if you're talking upside or not. Like if you want the higher upside guys, I think you actually keep Nas, and then you consider dropping Dante or Brandon Miller. I would say it's between Dante and Brandon Miller as a drop for me. I'm so I don't know what the right word is. Obsessed with Nas Reid's upside that it's really hard for me to say drop him. So I mean, do you have a strong take on this?
I love Nas Reid, man. He's like their Bobby Portis, I think, in some ways, where it's like, we've seen Portis. Like Portis was a top 100 player a couple years ago, and Brook missed all that time. And it's like, if Towns or Gobert were to go down, I think he could really explode. But neither of those guys. Like, I guess Towns has missed time on and off, but it's been like one catastrophic injury or he plays 70 games. There's like no in between with him. And Gobert, as far as like big men go, Gobert has been underratedly like super healthy his whole career. Like usually guys, have some sort of degenerative lower body issue at some point, and he just doesn't really miss games. So it's a tough time to ask this because, like you said, a week ago I would have said drop Brandon Miller. We do have to keep in mind that Gordon Hayward should be back in like a week, and
Cody Martin's in and out.
I mean, don't even get me started.
For his whole career.
The moment that I added him in an important league, he's just like day to day now. I think I would drop Miller. I think I would. Like you said, you're punting on some upside there, but DiVincenzo's been really consistent. Nas Reid, even in lighter minutes, has been pretty consistent. And I do worry. I mean, Gordon Hayward's not a part of their future, but I think they're going to play him when he comes back. And I don't really think that helps Brandon Miller. Matt says, could Haliburton have come back too soon and hurt his hamstring? That's why they rested him. Very possible. Maybe wanted to get him out there with Siakam. I get that, but hopefully nothing long-term there for Haliburton. Let's see. Alex says, should I try to move Kessler? When he plays, he's great, but he seems to have settled into the backup center role, unfortunately. Super weird situation. And obviously Utah's playing well. So, are you going to look Will Hardy in the face and be like, your rotation's wrong? They have lost 2 in a row, 2 close games to decent teams in OKC and Houston. So maybe nothing too concerning. And Kessler did play 32 minutes before fouling out against Houston the other night. He's got 13 blocks over the last 3 games. So while it's weird and frustrating that he's not starting, he's averaging more blocks per game this year than he was last year. So ultimately, I think the numbers have actually been okay. The rebounding is down a little bit. I think, if I have Kessler, I'm ultimately okay with the situation. It'd be one thing if he was playing like 14 minutes off the bench, but for the most part, if we isolate his last 13 games, he's averaging 22.5 minutes. Again, not what you want, but the production's been okay. He's averaging, almost 3 blocks a game in that span.
88th ranked player in 8-cat over the past month, despite playing 22 minutes, like you just said. This has to be his floor. Like, he's not going to start playing 14 minutes. So I think it's only upside from here. I would actually, I would look to keep him probably, and just hope that maybe they do something at the deadline, frees him up. Even if they don't, you're still rostering a top 100 player who's getting you great blocks. So I just hang on.
My trade so far, says Carpo Flex. He said he traded Vassell for Butler and just proposed Tyus Jones for Durant. I would co-sign both of those. Obviously, if you need assists, it's tough to part ways with Jones, but I think Durant's basically a double-double every night. And I think we talked about this one a couple weeks ago, Alex, the Vassell-Butler situation. You're trading consistency and health for upside, but I feel like if somebody had told you even a month or 2 ago that you could get Jimmy Butler for Devin Vassell, you'd be like, I'm doing that every time.
Yeah, Butler's injuries, but hey, you did the trade, you got the upside, if you can get Durant for Tyus Jones, that's a huge win. So I like that proposal. Maybe, hopefully the rival manager needs a point guard really badly, and he's willing to take that, because I think Durant is the much better fantasy player.
Ray says, would you rather pick up Trae Jones from San Antonio or Jaden Ivey from the Detroit Pistons? Probably Ivey. I've been kind of an Ivey hater. Like, I loved him in college, and I was just like, I just don't know if this is going to translate. Didn't look good last year. He's played pretty dang well. Pardon my language. The big question with Ivey is, if Cade's back later this week, then what?
Yes. That's my concern, because I think Trae Jones, like, we saw what Trae Jones' upside is last year, which is like a fringe top 100 player. And that's what he's doing this year since becoming a starter. He's like in the 90 to 100 range, which is like a nice floor if in a 12-team league. It's a nice guy to have. But Ivey, you mentioned, has played so well with Cade out. that he's kind of killing your free throw percentage. But part of me would hope, who's to say, Monty Williams does the right thing and just plays Jay and Ivey 30 minutes a game no matter what. So I think I would prefer taking the chance on Ivey, but just know that that's a ceiling play. And if you really, really need, like, I absolutely need a top 90 player on my team, a top 100 player on my team, I just need that production. I can't give it up. Like, if you're in a 16-team league, Trae Jones is probably the better move, but again, it's a floor versus ceiling thing.
Ant, familiar name in the chat, says, "Sup, fellas? Need someone for steals, and I have Eason and Nesmith, who has more upside. Great show. Keep up the good work." Thank you, Ant. We appreciate that. So Eason versus Nesmith, if we're just talking steals, we should note on Eason, he has not played since New Year's Day, and he did not play Saturday or Sunday. I mean, there's a chance he could be back this week. They're taking it game to game. Houston doesn't play until Wednesday, so we probably don't get an update until tomorrow night at the earliest, maybe even Wednesday. Then they have a back-to-back Friday, Saturday. So, even if he comes back Wednesday, you could see them maybe holding him out of one of those back-to-backs. So you're probably looking at, maybe a next week situation as far as getting Easton back in the lineup. Rockets do have 4 games next week. I think in terms of steals upside, it kind of has to be Easton because the steal rate was preposterous before he got hurt. I mean, he was averaging 2.6 steals per game over his last 10 games before the injury.
Yeah, he's the better steals guy per 36, and he's also the better fantasy player per minute. Like, Eason's a per minute fantasy monster. We've been talking about that since last year. The lower leg thing concerns me. I gotta be honest. Like, just being semi day to day with like an undisclosed leg injury that's just being described as soreness is super weird. And he's not a guy that was playing big minutes anyway. So look, I would love to roster Tyrese, and I think he's the better guy, but it still worries me. I don't know how else to. I wish I had like a more definitive answer.
Yeah, if you're looking for safety and you need immediate impact, then just go grab Eason. Or grab Eason. Sorry, go grab Nesmith. Because we don't know when Eason's going to be back, and now that like Ahmed Thompson's in the mix, Cam Whitmore's in the mix, it's like it's not a guarantee that Eason walks back into 25 to 28 minutes a night like he was playing prior to the injury. So more upside with Eason, more uncertainty there as well. Would you drop Grayson Allen for either Naz Reid, Malik Monk, or Wendell Carter? He says, Allen is my worst player, and I've been streaming that spot in a points league.
Yeah, I mean, Allen's been pretty good. Do you have to drop him? I mean, I don't think you have to. I mean, he's ranked 45th over the past 30 days and 52nd over the past 2 weeks. Like, he's awesome. If you really felt like you had to drop him for some reason, maybe Monk. I don't know how much I trust Wendell Carter to stay healthy. Played pretty well recently since coming back, but I don't think you have to drop Allen.
No, I mean, I think him and Malik Monk are weirdly comparable players now because they both have these boom games. Like, Grayson Allen has an 8 3-pointer and 2 9 3-pointer games in the last month. And that's also kind of what Malik Monk does. Like, once every couple of weeks, he'll just go like 7 for 9 from 3. He'll also mix in some terrible games in there as well. But I mean, he's also been handing out quite a few assists this season, and he's been blocking a ton of shots for a guy his size. He's up at like 0.8 blocks per game. That's significantly higher over the last few weeks, 1.1 block per game over the last 15. So those are all pretty appealing options to me, honestly. I don't think you can really go wrong, but yeah, I think I would just default to ride this out with Grayson Allen. I mean, he's in a pretty good spot right now. So that's right.
Yeah. In a points league, I could see the argument for dropping him for Carter, just because I think Carter's probably a better like per minute fantasy point guy. But yeah, it's a hard choice. All
right. Pokey Marquette says, how do you feel about the Magic rotation with their preferred lineup finally healthy, barring Fultz sitting out today, of course? And he also notes that he dropped Cam Johnson in a 10-teamer this morning for Wendell Carter.
I think that's a fine move. That's like a very, very good 10-team league transaction. Yeah, we've been kind of talking about what's going to happen is Fultz ever going to come back? When's Franz Wagner coming back? And that, it finally happened. Yeah, I mean, Fultz as a guy who is seeing what the minutes he's seeing right now, which is like 23 to 29, 30-ish. I don't know if he's a 12 team league guy. I can see wanting to add him just to get out ahead of it because he's proven to be 12 team league viable in the past. Batatse was a DMP. That was kind of weird. He might be an auto drop at this point, but I don't have like major insights besides saying like Wendell Carter looks like a pickup right now.
Yeah, and I was wrong. I didn't think we would. I kind of wrote him off. I was all over Batadze, who was a DNP in their last game, which is notable because he'd been playing pretty well. Carter's just kind of rediscovered it out of nowhere. Honestly, I mean, he had just not looked anything like himself when he played earlier this season, and now 17, 18, 25, 17 points respectively in his last 4. Defensive stats, I think, are going to vary. Rebounds are going to vary, but he takes some threes. He's been getting to the line at a decent rate, so I think you have to buy on him right now. Christopher says, do you think there's change coming in Houston, and suggesting, perhaps Cam Whitmore, taking over some more minutes from Jalen Green? I don't know. Houston's got too many guys, man. I feel like we were on this early in the season, and that was part of the reason that I kind of stayed away from Amen Thompson. And then the injury just kind of solved that for us on the fly. But they have so many options at like the 2-3 spot, especially.
Yeah, I don't know if changes are coming. I mean, I think they're kind of playing with house money this season to an extent. They're a young enough team where it's like they're building towards something right now. I don't think they would swap Whitmore for Green in the starting lineup, but yeah, you also have Easton coming back. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a major change coming. I don't really anticipate that.
Too much invested in Jalen Green. It'd be one thing if his minutes were starting to tail off. They really haven't. And I know Fred VanVleet's been out, so it's been tough to get a full gauge on that. I do think Ime Udoka is one of the few coaches who would have the balls to do that. So that is, like if he really feels like Jalen Green's hurting them, I don't think it's out of the question, but we just haven't seen enough evidence yet for me. All right, we'll hit a few more before we're out of here, guys. How do you feel about the article that was released by the NBA that stated resting has no correlation to preserving health for athletes? Good question. I read into that a little bit over the weekend. You and I, Alex, have dealt with this boots on the ground more than anybody. So I was like, I was kind of relieved to hear this. The whole COVID situation was a nightmare for us logistically on the RotoWire side of things. I mean, obviously we provide player news, but we do projections and lineups, and there was just a significant number of hoops that had to be jumped through to accommodate all that. And obviously rest has kind of been something that's built upon that. I don't know. I feel like anecdotally we're seeing a lot less rest this season, right? Like, has anybody talked to you about Kawhi Leonard missing too many games? Not really.
No. Maybe some of that is the games minimum. Guys want to try to hit that, so there's less resting early in the year. But then my question is going to be, what if a guy's on track to play like 78 games and there's 10 games left in the season and they know that he can rest like 7 of the last 10 if they need him to because he's gonna hit the minimum? How do I feel about it? I don't know. Look, I don't want to say it's a lie or it's propaganda, but if you play pickup basketball, go play pickup basketball 2 days back to back and then take a day off and then play again. And then next week play just 1 day and see how you feel. See how your knees feel. That's what I would say about that. Okay.
All right. Fair enough. I'm not going to speak anymore on this. I need to read the full report, but before I dive in, but I don't know. It's certainly interesting. And it's very interesting to me that the NBA like put this out publicly, right? It's almost like see, you don't need to be resting, right? Like the NBA kind of trumpeted these results, I felt like, which was the most interesting aspect.
Yeah, it's not like they didn't circulate this. Well, I guess maybe, it's sort of internal. I don't know. It will get leaked regardless. So maybe they just figure we put it out there, but yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's a lot of wear and tear in your joints and soft tissue and stuff like that to play all these games. And I don't know. I don't know what to believe.
All right, we got a few more minutes. Let's go rapid fire here. our good pal Carpaflex, by the way, reminds everyone, like the video. Please like the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can follow us on Twitter as well. See it on the screen there. Any of that really, really helps us more than you guys probably realize. But yes, please, we appreciate that shout out. Give it a like, give it a share, whatever you can do there. Mike says, do I trade Scotty Barnes for Kawhi Leonard in a 12-team points league?
That practically qualifies as a blockbuster.
I think it would.
I am fine with that trade. We all know the risks about Kawhi, and I assume the person you're trading with is also, everyone understands what's going on here. Everyone understands what this trade's about. So I think it's worth it. I think it'd be hard to pull the trigger for me because of the concern for Kawhi, but
is it worth it in a points league specifically? Because, a huge part of the appeal with Kawhi is he's shooting 52% from the field, which is ridiculous. 88% at the line. Barnes, if you look at, some of like the season long ratings, he rates lower because he's 74% at the line. Still shooting, 48% from the field, but it's not Kawhi level. So if you take that out of the mix, are they a little more comparable?
Yeah, I guess in a points league, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't read that it was points league. That's my fault. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's fine, but I don't know if I would necessarily take the risk then. Apologies for not realizing you said points league. Yeah. I should probably read with my eyes.
I think it's close enough in a points league that Kawhi's the better player. I'm not saying he's not. We just, we know what the history is there. All right, we'll do this one quick. KD or Tatum rest of season, 9-cat.
I think this is another like injury risk versus safer guy with lower upside thing. If you need the jolt, like if you're 6th in your standings and you're trying to make a run for top 3, I think you make the trade for KD. If you're at the top of your league, if you're top 3 and you just want to play it safe, I would keep Tatum.
All right, Admiral Nita says, do I trade Jalen Green for Wendell Carter and Draymond Green in a 12-team category league?
I think you do. I think you do, because Jalen Green is like barely, I don't even know if you have to roster him in the first place in a 12-team category league. Wendell Carter Jr. at his apex is definitely rosterable, or should be rostered. And Draymond probably, should be rostered as well. So I would do this. Yeah, 2 for 1 for sure.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts on Jabari Walker rest of season? He has started 4 straight now for Portland. He's been in the mix, really all season in their rotation. He's picked up more and more minutes over the last few weeks. Of note, went from playing 32, 29, 30, 41 minutes down to just 22 with dominating back in the mix, able to get to the arena these last couple of games. So, you gotta worry about that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, in terms of, is he rosterable or whatnot? I guess, yeah. I mean, Portland's really struggling to score. They're struggling to do everything lately. There's going to be some really ugly games. I mean, they've scored under 90 like 4 times in the last couple of weeks. So you're going to have to live with the downs. But for the most part, I really like what I've seen from Jabari Walker. I think he feels to me more like a true, like, this guy could be part of our future, as opposed to we're just throwing minutes out to anybody because we don't care.
Yeah, I talked about him a little bit on the Friday pod, but I'll kind of reiterate it because I also wrote a dynasty article about like young guys to target, and he just missed the cut. I mean, I didn't want the article to be like 4,000 words about every young player in the NBA, but he has a really he's just a really unique stat profile where he's taking 3 threes a game, but per 36 minutes he's taking 3 threes. He's also getting 3 offensive rebounds and 4 free throw attempts a game, in addition to his 11 rebounds. And solid defense. So it's like a really bizarre, you don't see this a lot, a combination of like good 3-point shooter, also offensive rebounds, also gets to the line, that kind of a thing. So I'm really intrigued by him going forward. I think this season, yeah, maybe at the end of the year he'll break out, but this to me is like, if you're in a deeper dynasty format and you're looking for someone like, maybe I can just grab this guy really low key, no one's going to notice, I just stash him for a while. I think I'm pretty interested in him. I gotta be honest.
All right, we will hit a couple more here. What do we got? All right, Alex says, get Derek White for Anthony Simons. Thinking about doing a soft punt of points in a 12-team 9-cat league. So he'd be basically trading Simons straight up for Derek White.
Trading Simon straight up for Derek White. I do. Do you have a strong opinion on this one?
I love Simon so much, and he basically showed exactly what we hoped early in the season, and then he's been like sick on and off the last couple of weeks, and it feels like that's impacting him a little bit. I think the Blazers just sucking is also dragging him down. But if you're punting points, I guess Derek White, yeah, then that makes sense because Simons gives you okay rebounding for his size, okay assists, really nothing defensively whatsoever. The big thing I guess you'd be losing other than points would be threes because he is very 3-point dependent, gets to the line a decent amount. But if you're okay punting points, then yeah, I think I'd prefer Derek White because that's, points are really what you're seeking with Simons.
Yeah, Simons has been a little cold shooting the ball lately. I still think he has like top 60 upside ideally, but White's been playing at top 60 upside like all season, or he's been there. So yeah, I would want White, I think, actually. Yeah.
Good question for Paul. Is Chris Paul a hold or a drop? We talked about some of these injured guys being let go in some competitive leagues earlier. Last update we got was like almost 2 weeks ago that he'll be reevaluated in 3 weeks. So could be back right before the All-Star break. Would not be surprised if this goes till after the break, but what say you on dropping him?
8 caddies ranked 111th. It wasn't like trending up or anything, I feel like he's kind of just been this guy all year. I think it's a fine drop, to be honest. I mean, if your IR is full, anybody outside the top 100, if you're in a standard league, you don't really need to be rostering, assuming you're not expecting anything crazy. I think you can drop him. Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. All right, we'll do a couple more and then be out of here. Thinking of so he'd be offering Daniel Gafford and Wendell Carter for Darius Garland because of playoff schedule. Is it worth it basically to make this deal, take the short-term hit, and then get Garland later?
Gafford and Wendell Carter Jr. The thing is, in a points league, it's a lot more straightforward with some of these trades because you're just adding up the total points. Right. So, with Gafford, he's averaging 30 fantasy points a game, which I think is more than people kind of realize. And with Wendell Carter showing like 30 fantasy point per game upside, that's 60. Garland's going to get you 40 probably. So I think I would rather keep the two guys. If you think the playoff schedule is like way better, I understand wanting to make this move, but I think it has a chance to be even, but yeah.
I think you broke that down well. The only other thing I would say is, are you starting both Gafford and Carter Jr.? Or if you're choosing one or the other and you can't start them both each week because they are both centers, obviously, then I would just do the deal and get Garland. But if you're able to start them both, then like Alex said, the math is pretty simple to add up, and I think that's your better option, especially not knowing when Garland's coming back. He's going to miss at least 3 more games. There's been no real indication that he's all that close, and you just never know with something like a broken jaw. Chahu says, who would you prefer in a 12-team points league, Buddy Hield or Markelle Fultz? Tough question.
Probably Fultz, because you aren't like a lot of Hield's value when we talk about Hield in fantasy is the 3-pointers, and you don't get a bonus for that in a points league. Like there's no like a real bonus for that. So I would go Fultz, even though we have some injury concerns. It's just like Hield has been up and down. Like he's playing real well lately. He started the past 5 games and everything, but like he's averaging 24 fantasy points a game. There should be a million guys in the waiver wire close to 24 points a game, especially if you consider guys on 4-game weeks. I think I'd rather have Fultz for the upside.
Yep, you said it. I mean, love Hield in category leagues. Every year he's top 5 in total made threes. He's inching his way toward that. Actually, by the end of the week, he'll probably be in the top 5 with Trae Young missing time. So, just a different player in points league than he is in category leagues. All right, let's see. This is a good one. Would you trade Jaren Jackson for Siakam? Points league.
Probably. Yeah. I'm worried about Jaren Jackson getting shut down for sure.
Yeah, I worry about that too. The inefficiency, less of a concern in points. I do think Jaren Jackson's a slightly better player, but I think Siakam's going to take off over these next few weeks in Indy. All right, let's do one more and then we'll wrap it up. Let's see. I mean, well, this is a good one because we just talked about Fultz. Cam Johnson or Fultz? I would still go Cam. I'm a little concerned by what I've seen from Fultz.
I think I would still go Cam Johnson because I think he's just, first of all, I think he's just cold shooting. He's averaging 25 points a game on the season. Yeah, I don't know if Fultz is 100% healthy. Like, it's hard for me to say, we just talked about Fultz and there are situations where you should pick him up. But I think it's a decent buy low on Cam Johnson.
Worth holding Shaedon Sharpe on IR. Totally, this is it depends for me. I do think when we saw it at the end of last year, like, they're not shutting him down, right? Like, if they do go into shutdown mode, it's Grant. I guess it could be Simons, although he's young enough that you wouldn't think they need to. Brogdon, we'll see if he's even on the roster. Ayton, but Sharpe went nuts at the end of last year. The question is it just too late and it doesn't even count for fantasy?
Very possible. Yeah, and I think Sharpe's a little bit of an overrated category league player anyway. In a points league, I would say he's 100% worth a stash if you can, again, if you don't need the spot necessarily, but yeah, in category leagues, he's not like a fantastic guy.
Yeah. Appreciate the kind words here from Manila's Most Wanted. I wish we could do this every day, man. Us too. One of the best fantasy weekly shows. We do it every day. Not Alex and I will say that, but we do have streams going every Monday through Friday. So I'm with Alex on Mondays, but we got Steve, Dr. A, recent Hall of Famer in the fantasy industry. He hosts on Tuesdays. I'm back with Brandon Kravitz on Wednesday. We do a very similar show to this one on Wednesday mornings. And then Alex is back on Fridays with Ken and Shannon. That's always a really fun one. That one does numbers. You guys talk waiver wire, super valuable going into the weekend. So while you don't get Alex and I every day, we do have 5 streams a week. So make sure you check those out on Twitter or on the RotoWire YouTube page. We'll end on this one, Alex. Matt says, thanks, guys. Appreciate the show. Appreciate you listening, Matt. Too bad about the Packers, but I'm excited about their future. Yes, I am as well. Do you see the Bucks making any moves before the deadline? This is near and dear to our heart.
We had that weird report that they were interested in DeJounte Murray. You and I kind of talked about that. I'm like, with what assets? I think they will. I would think they will try to make a move. In my opinion, I don't think they should be shy about trading guys like Beauchamp, or Andre Jackson and Payne and whatever picks they can trade on. I don't think they should be shy about that. I know some people are kind of attached to Beauchamp. He's fine. If you can get someone like even like Caruso or someone like that, I think you just do it. DeLon Wright. I don't know. You just do it.
Yeah, I think those are far more realistic targets. I mean, I had so many people text me last week, like, are we getting DeJounte Murray? I'm like, how, man? Like, I mean, are you sending out Chris Middleton? Like, for one, matching salaries is one thing, but even if that wasn't a consideration, it's like, are the Hawks dying to get their hands on Pat Connaughton? Andre Jackson and Marjon Beauchamp, I think, have some value. I don't think those are the key pieces in a DeJounte Murray trade. I just don't think that type of deal is likely for Milwaukee. I think they'll, maybe you get a third team involved, I guess. But again, like Milwaukee's, all their draft capital is tied up through 2030. So they don't really have a whole lot they could put on the table there either. I don't really see it. That's, you go all in to get Damian Lillard. That's the price you pay. Is you just don't really have that kind of flexibility. So I think they'll do something. They'll obviously be active in the buyout market, but I would be very surprised if they find a way to bring in someone the caliber of Murray. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for listening, watching along live. You can catch the archive version on YouTube whenever you want. We put this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods as well. So just subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Pod. Check us out, rotowire.com/basketball. We put a ton of content up there every single day throughout the season and during the offseason for what it's worth. You can also hear Alex and I Monday through Friday on SiriusXM NBA Radio. We do a preview show talking gambling, talking fantasy. That is 7 to 7:30 Eastern, Monday through Friday. You can hear me on the Fantasy Channel, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday as well. So thanks for another good show, guys. These were a great batch of questions. I'll be back on Wednesday with Brandon. Alex, you'll be back Friday, and we'll be back together next week, Monday.